The Mongol Empire, the largest contiguous land empire in history. How did the Mongols conquer so much land so fast? Well, today we're going to find out. We begin with a small but proud people known as the Mongols. After a long and brutal campaign, the Western Shaya were crushed, and their lands were incorporated into the growing Mongol Empire. One by one, he crushed all of the enemies of the Mongols. Soon Genghis turned his attention to the riches of China proper. The Jin dynasty would prove to be a tougher nut to crack, but eventually the Mongols prevailed. The Mongols used feigned retreats, flanking maneuvers, and concentrated archery to devastating effect. Although the Mongols were known as a cavalry-based military force, they actually excelled in siege warfare as well. The Yam was basically a series of way stations that were spaced out across the empire. By 1279, he had crushed the Song dynasty, and the Mongols now controlled all of China. Under Kublai, the Mongols became Sinicized, and the empire's capital was moved to Beijing. If you want to learn more about the Mongols, I highly recommend reading The History of the Mongol Empire by David Morgan. The Yuan dynasty would mark a new golden age for the empire, but it would also be the beginning of its end. The Chinese were never really a fan of the Mongols ruling over them, and in 1368, a Chinese general named Zhu Yuanzhang would lead a rebellion against them. After 14 years of fighting, the Mongols were finally driven out of China, and the Yuan dynasty came to an end. These way stations were used to relay messages, but also to house and feed travelers. The messengers would travel day and night, switching out horses every few hours to keep the message moving as fast as possible. Thanks to the Yam, a message could be sent from one end of the empire to the other in less than a week. They developed some very sophisticated siege engines such as catapults, trebuchets, battering rams, and various types of towers. Mongol engineers were even capable of building large artificial hills to help in the assault. Most Mongol sieges followed a simple pattern. First, the Mongols would surround the city and completely cut it off. Then they would begin bombarding the city with siege engines. Once the walls were breached, the Mongol assault began, and the defenders were almost always caught by surprise. This is because the Mongols believed that a good defense was all about deception, so they would often make several false attacks to trick the defenders into thinking that was where the main assault would be. Their composite bows were also unmatched, allowing them to shoot with great accuracy and range. When facing armored opponents, the Mongols would simply ride in circles around them, firing arrow after arrow until they were exhausted or dead. If that didn't work, then the Mongols would employ what is known as a psychological torture method. Basically, they would kill some enemy soldiers, and then throw their heads on top of their shields and armor, making it look like the rest of them were wearing human skin. Pretty messed up if you ask me. Victory after victory, the fledgling Mongol Empire grew ever larger. They lived in a region we today call Mongolia, nestled between Russia and China. He hoped to forge an alliance with them, but when they refused, he crushed them utterly. It is at this point that we should probably talk about how the Mongols were even able to conquer so much land so fast. And there are three major factors. The first was their unmatched cavalry. Cavalry has always been a major component of military forces throughout history, but Mongol cavalry was superior to all others because of two factors: discipline and numbers. Mongol cavalrymen were incredibly disciplined and well-trained, which allowed them to fight as one cohesive unit, and they almost always had more men than their opponents. Because of this, the Mongol army was able to steamroll over pretty much everything in its path. From there, the Mongols swept like a wildfire across Eurasia. In 1223, they fought the Russians at the Battle of the Kalkaya River, and although it was a tactical draw, it was a strategic defeat for the Russians since the Mongols kept pushing into their lands. With the death of Genghis Khan in 1227, the Mongol conquests would come to a temporary halt, but his successors would soon resume the campaign. For centuries, they were just another nomadic horse-riding culture until one man united them under his banner. That man was Genghis Khan. After uniting the Mongol tribes, he set his sights on conquest. His first target, the Karakitai, a powerful Turkish state that had been raiding Mongol territory. By 1201, the Mongols had struck back and defeated them. But Genghis wasn't done. He wanted more. In 1206, he took his armies west to the Kingdom of Western Xia, yet another powerful state that had been harassing his people for years. In 1219, Genghis set his sights on Khwarezmia, a wealthy Central Asian state. By 1231, the once small Mongol Empire stretched from the Pacific Ocean to Eastern Europe. That's insane. Their success in battle also had a lot to do with their tactics. The second factor contributing to their success was their siege. The third factor was their communication system known as the Yam. As the Mongol Empire grew, Genghis's grandson Kublai Khan set his sights on the riches of China. With that, the reign of the Mongols would come to an end, but their legacy would live on for many years to come. Thank you for watching. I hope you learned something new.